The world is once again watching Washington. With Donald Trump back in the White House in 2025, his trademark policy tool, tariffs, has returned to the forefront of global economics. Markets, analysts and policymakers braced for a repeat of the turbulence that shook the international system during his first term. Yet this time, the outcome is not quite what many expected. The Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, headquartered in Paris, has released its latest projections. Against all odds, the global economy appears more resilient than feared. Growth is now estimated at 3.2% for 2025, a slight upward revision compared to earlier forecasts. While that figure remains shy of the pre-Trump optimism that accompanied his predecessor's years, it suggests the international system has found ways to adjust. The resilience, however, is unevenly spread. Emerging markets, including Indonesia, Brazil and India, are recording stronger performances than initially projected. According to OECD Chief Economist Álvaro Pereira, this optimism stems from temporary shocks, unique events that boosted activity but may not last. Even so, these countries have provided unexpected ballast at a time when advanced economies, particularly the United States and Europe, are slowing down. For Washington, the picture is more complex. Trump has described his tariff policy as a form of economic justice, a way to balance the scales after decades of what he calls unfair treatment. He insists that China, for example, has long imposed barriers on American goods and manipulated its currency to maintain an advantage. His administration now responds with reciprocal duties, set deliberately lower than Beijing's, but still steep enough to alter trade flows. To his supporters, this is the rebirth of American industry. Trump declared April 2, 2025, Liberation Day, the moment when, in his words, America reclaimed its economic destiny. He signed executive orders to close duty-free exemptions and impose tariffs across a wide range of imports. For many in his political base, this marks the restoration of sovereignty in economic affairs. But the economic data tells a more sobering story. US growth is expected to fall sharply from 2.8% last year to 1.8% this year and down to just 1.5% in 2026. The very tool designed to protect American workers risks dampening consumer demand and squeezing businesses dependent on global supply chains. Economists warn that while tariffs can shelter some domestic industries, they also raise costs for manufacturers, limit consumer choice, and invite retaliation from trading partners. The OECD highlights Europe as another fragile point. Growth in the Eurozone is projected at just over 1%, with risks leaning downward. Germany's car industry, a powerhouse of European manufacturing, is particularly exposed. Factories in Wolfsburg and Munich continue to roll out vehicles, but executives remain wary of falling demand if tariff barriers rise further. The ripple effects of protectionism in Washington inevitably reach the assembly lines of Europe. China, meanwhile, has not stood still. The world's second-largest economy is forecast to grow by 4.9% this year. While slower than its rapid expansion of previous decades, it still represents a significant contribution to global momentum. Yet Beijing faces its own challenges: sluggish domestic consumption, rising debt, and the ever-present threat of new American measures. Officials in Beijing have signaled their intent to respond proportionally to Washington's tariffs, but for now, the focus is on maintaining stability at home. The Global South offers a mixed picture. Brazil, buoyed by commodities, is set for growth above 2%, while India continues its strong trajectory as one of the world's fastest-growing economies. Indonesia, too, has shown resilience. These markets benefit from diversified trade ties and growing domestic demand. For them, Trump's tariffs may be disruptive, but not devastating. Still, the OECD is cautious. The organization warns of potential budgetary risks, with government debts rising and interest rates creating new strains. Central banks face difficult choices. Keep rates high and investment could slow further. Cut too quickly and inflationary pressures may reignite. In this environment, tariffs add a further layer of uncertainty, complicating decisions for policymakers across continents. For ordinary citizens, the impact of tariffs is not felt in abstract percentages, but in daily life. American consumers are already paying more for imported goods, from electronics to clothing. Small businesses relying on international suppliers struggle with higher costs. In Europe, automakers warn of job risks if global trade slows. In China, workers in export-dependent factories worry about orders drying up. Behind the political speeches and economic charts, real livelihoods are at stake. Trump's narrative is one of renewal. He frames tariffs as the foundation of a new American century, where industry is reborn and national wealth restored. His opponents argue the opposite, that tariffs may isolate the United States, reduce competitiveness, and weaken the very global standing Washington seeks to preserve. This clash of perspectives underscores the deep political divide, not just in America, but in the broader international system. Analysts point out that the true test of tariffs is time. Short-term resilience may mask long-term consequences. Businesses adapt in the early months, finding alternative suppliers or passing costs to consumers. But over years, investment decisions shift, supply chains reorganize, and trade relationships rewire themselves. If tariffs persist, the shape of global commerce could be permanently altered. The OECD, tasked with advising its member states, has struck a careful balance. It acknowledges the immediate resilience of global growth while cautioning that optimism must not be mistaken for stability. Pereira, the chief economist, warns that industrial output and consumer confidence are likely to decline in the months ahead. For him, the challenge is clear. Prepare for turbulence even as short-term numbers remain steady. Looking back at Trump's first term, the lessons are instructive. The trade war of 2018 to 2019 disrupted agriculture, manufacturing, and technology sectors. Markets fluctuated, but ultimately both the US and China absorbed much of the impact. Today, however, the stakes are higher. The global economy is still recovering from pandemic shocks, adjusting to energy transitions, and grappling with geopolitical conflicts. Tariffs in this environment are not just an economic policy, they are a geopolitical weapon. Reactions abroad highlight this reality. European leaders tread carefully, unwilling to provoke Washington, but also determined to defend their industries. China signals readiness to retaliate, but keeps one eye on maintaining growth at home. Emerging markets watch closely, seeking to position themselves as alternative partners in a fractured trade system. For many, Trump's tariffs are less about numbers and more about the rules of the global game. Critics within the US raise further concerns. Some argue tariffs risk undermining alliances, particularly with partners in Europe and Asia. Others stress that the burden often falls hardest on small businesses and working-class consumers, those least able to absorb higher prices. Yet Trump's political message resonates with those who feel left behind by globalization, reinforcing his image as a defender of American workers. The OECD's forecast for 2026 is less optimistic. Global growth slowing to 2.9%, with the US and Europe leading the downturn. Emerging markets may still offer bright spots, but the structural weaknesses are evident. Rising debt, political tensions, and fragmented trade patterns could weigh heavily on the years ahead. And so the question remains, is the world merely bending under the weight of tariffs, or is it on the brink of breaking? For now, resilience is the headline, but resilience is not the same as strength. The OECD reminds us that shocks, once temporary, can become permanent if left unchecked. Trump, meanwhile, continues to celebrate tariffs as a triumph. To his supporters, April 2nd, 2025 is a date of pride, the moment American industry was reborn. To critics, it is the beginning of a new era of uncertainty. The reality likely lies somewhere in between. The global economy, interconnected and adaptive, has absorbed the first blows, but the scars may deepen with time. As policymakers debate and markets adjust, the human dimension, jobs, wages, livelihoods, remains the truest measure of success or failure. The OECD's report is not a final verdict, but a warning signal. Tariffs may not have toppled the global economy in 2025, but their ripple effects will be felt for years to come. Whether they reshape the world for better or worse is a story still being written. For now, one truth is undeniable. In the age of Trump's tariffs, no economy stands alone.